When the baby cried had no relationship at all to when or how much it refluxed. So, and the same answer looked at it in a totally different way. And I put this in here because one of the things that I heard from one of the other attendings in Boston, which I never heard anybody say before, is, "Oh, the baby's arching his back. That means he has reflux." And I'd never heard that. Maybe some of you have heard this. I didn't. I'd never heard anybody say that. So I found that in fact, there was, in this study, no correlation between back arching and reflux. In fact, the person who wrote the paper said, if the baby's arching his back doesn't correlate, if you want to look for reflux, look for somebody who spits up all the time, which sort of made sense. So what I've done here, and I've taken a long time to do it, because I think this is one of the real problems with medicine nowadays, is we don't put fussy babies on PPIs or H2 receptor antagonists, because A, it doesn't work, and B, it does the babies harm. So, and I'm very happy to see that now in the U.S. this is starting to take hold, and people aren't doing that anymore. So, reflex number 2, change the formula. Or in the breastfed babies, change the diet. So this isn't totally a bad reflex. It's a reflex that may actually get you somewhere as long as you take a good history and try to figure out what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about that. One of the first things that I see pediatricians do is they say, "Oh, maybe the baby's lactose intolerant. I should put the baby on a lactose-free formula." And this then gets to a discussion of, does lactose intolerance occur in little babies? And the short answer is no. And maybe let me explain a little bit about this. I have time, don't I? I'm okay. Yeah, okay, plenty of time. All right. So if you look at what happens with the carbohydrate absorption in babies, for a normal physiologic baby, and remember, all of our babies are designed to be breastfed. That's how we evolved as a species. And every baby, when it comes out, it can digest lactose. It has the lactase enzyme. And that's because the carbohydrate, most of the carbohydrate that's in the breast milk, is in the form of lactase. So the normal thing to do, if you're a mother, is to gradually, over the first 3 years of life, wean the baby off of breastfeeding and onto other foods. So this is what's happened for the past several thousand years with our evolution. That's what people did. Now, if you think about this, and go back several thousand years ago, what one thing in our diet was the most precious? Protein. You really need protein, and we didn't get enough protein. So conserving protein was a big deal. So why would you, as a human, waste protein making an enzyme that you didn't need? So that after the baby's weaned, there's no need for lactase, because the only place it was present in the diet, well, lactose was present in the diet, was in that milk. So we started to shut that gene off, and the people that could do that had a selective advantage because they had other uses for the protein, and they were able to conserve protein that way. Then some people figured you could milk cows and drink that and get protein out of that milk. So there was a certain subgroup of people that were selected out to be lactase persistent so they could drink this stuff later in life and get protein that way. So we have two populations in our world. One is lactose malabsorbers that start around 3 years of age and become clinically symptomatic at about 5 or 10 or 15 years of age. And then we have those with lactase persistence that you know that we can drink the stuff as long as we want. The important thing here is obviously little babies are all lactose tolerant, and none of them are lactose intolerant. And if they were, you know, up until 100 years ago, that would have been a lethal mutation. So we don't see it. Now, having said that, you can buy a lactose-free cow milk formula and feed it to a baby, under the assumption that the baby's lactose intolerant, but it's not. So no point in doing that. So this little paper here was actually a very old study that was published fairly recently by a colleague of mine, Colin Rudolph, who found these data somewhere and said, this needs to be published because people don't understand that, put that out there so that we would understand that putting fussy babies on lactose-free formulas does nothing. And so it's just like the PPIs, it doesn't work. That's if you do it in a placebo-controlled environment. Another just graph of the same data. It didn't work. You know, it doesn't make any sense to do that. However, having said that, switching formulas actually seems to work in these babies. And so I thought maybe I should tell you a little bit about that and perhaps a little bit about why it might work. So if you look at consumer marketing data, you'll find that even though only probably 5 to 7, I think it's higher than 2 to 5% cow milk protein intolerance, if you look at and throw in the non-IgE type of allergy, and I'm sure Professor Shaw will tell you all about this, it's probably a higher number than 2%, but it's certainly not 50% of babies allergic to cow milk. So about 30 to 50% of babies are switched because of some perceived symptom from one formula to another, and up to 80% of the parents say, gee, that made the baby feel better. Now, usually gassiness, which actually usually means crying, or irritability are the main reasons for switching. This is one thing I've learned. Parents will come in and they say, my baby's gassy. Oh, does that mean he passes gas or it comes up the top? No, he just cries all the time. Or my baby's constipated. Does that mean his stools are hard? No, he cries all the time. Yeah. And so I've learned over the years that I have to quiz people out, because a lot of times when they tell you the baby's, or their older child, in fact, is gassy or constipated, what they're really telling you is they cry and they hurt. And so you have to elicit that. So then let's take this story a little bit further. This is a study that I did years ago. I used to be Neil Shaw, and I worked at Mead Johnson, and I had the opportunity, like he does, to make formulas and whatever. And we made this little formula called Gentilese, and it was kind of a neat little formula. It had a partially hydrolyzed protein in it, so the protein was broken down a little bit. It's not truly hypoallergenic, but it's from an allergenicity standpoint, it's different. It has a few other things that are helpful. And so we took this formula and we took a soy formula, which would also be a different protein, not truly hypoallergenic, but different, and fed them to fussy babies, and within 2 days the babies got less fussy. And it persisted. It didn't come back. Now, if you look at these data and you say, why is this? Is this because the babies were allergic? Or is this, and you gave them not a hypoallergenic formula, but a different protein, and so they transiently improved? Or is this placebo effect? And the answer is, I don't have any idea. But the stuff sure worked. And it gave the opportunity for the parents to switch to a formula that was pretty physiologic for the baby and seemed to work. Same thing with the crying. Interesting observation. Wish I had a better explanation for it. I do know how to figure it out, but we didn't ever do that. Okay, so I think I said a possible explanations, allergy or placebo. So could this be an allergic problem? So what I want to do now is talk to you a little bit about fussiness, irritability, and milk allergy. And so this story goes back into the 1980s when these folks in Sweden raised the question as to whether or not cow milk protein allergy could cause colic. And so what they did was they took babies that had were fussy and irritable, and they put them on either an extensively hydrolyzed casein-based infant formula. I guess I can say it was Nutramigen because it was the only one that was made at that time. And then they also put them on a soy formula, and then they went back and re-challenged them at